Hello, Nick from Boxy Pixel has sent me his aluminum or aluminium DMG style DS macro mod. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. Obviously, DS macros have been around for a really long time. This is just a very premium version of one. And it's a super fun mod to do. There's lots of different customization. There's also lots of different entry level kind of options for people who might not have technical soldering skills, who want to have a go at building something cool and then potentially progress further and add things or change things to it. It's just brilliant. What Nick does is phenomenal. Unfortunately, with such high quality comes quite a lot of cost. The actual shell itself is $115, but then there's probably another $30 or $40 worth of stuff that you need. So it is unfortunately quite expensive, but what it is something incredibly unique and very beautiful. One of the things that I love immediately off of the bat is the fact that this thing is actually a lot longer than the original DS Lite, and that is because cartridges are now going to fit flush inside the DS or the Game Boy, whatever we're going to be calling it, the DMG macro. So they're going to sit flush in there now, which is going to be really nice. That does mean that the headphone jack's further down. Not sure how many people are going to be using headphones on this thing, but it's still going to be very accessible down there. And then also the volume switch is going to be really far away, but then he's done lots of brilliant things and included these little metal parts. It's just phenomenal, to be honest with you. I mean, look at this. This here is the new volume slider. That sits in there and reaches all the way up to where the PCB is. And then there's various different things to dampen metal scraping on metal. Over here, he's included some other bits and bobs like this felt little kit, which has been die cut. It's beautiful. One of those is going to go in there, which is going to dampen that volume slider. And then there's also going to be one for the stylus, and for the buttons, there's a bunch of plastic pieces which sit inside this case, and then the buttons aren't rubbing metal on metal. It is a phenomenal thing. I'm super excited. We have got our work cut out for us. As I said as well, there's different levels to this. If you're a beginner or an intermediate or an expert solderer, there's lots of different versions of this mod that you can kind of do. This is the Helder amp mod for the DS Macro. This has the fuse inside, which is needed, or the resistor, whatever it is, which is needed to trick the DS into thinking that it's still got the top screen, so that when we remove the top screen, it'll actually work. Previously, lots of people were just sort of bridging a contact, but now there's lots of different options out there, including a nearly solder-free option where you just plug the ribbon cable into the top screen connector. And then there's two really nice big pads to solder the speaker to, which you're going to be taking from the top half of a DS. Or you can get your own speaker, whatever you want to use. There is actually two kind of different speaker options. You can have a DS speaker in the back here, and then the sound is going to come out of the bottom of the DS Macro, or you can have pretty much like a Nintendo Switch style speaker over here. So there is just so much customization. I really love that Nick does this. He just adds all of these different options for people who want to do different things. This one also has a preamp installed, so the speaker's going to be slightly louder, but that other one, which is the ribbon cable kit, won't have that. But if you're new to soldering, very big, easy pads to solder to. Perhaps once you've done that and you're a bit more confident, you can use this one. So that is enough waffling. Let us begin. Before we go any further, I would just like to say a massive thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. If you're looking to up the quality of your home tech DIY projects, then look no further than PCBWay. They offer CNC machining, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication, and injection molding. As well as that, they of course offer every single PCB you can possibly imagine. You don't have to spend a fortune buying massive quantities. They also do very small quantities for people just making personal projects who want that professional finish. Check out PCBWay through the link in the description below. So I've got 3 DS Lites here, and these are a pretty good example of why you might make a DS macro mod. The screen down here is super burnt, so this one you could potentially just swap the screen out. The top half is also burnt. It's got like a negative vignette, but then there's lots of screens, possibly like this one, or the battery's just dead on this. I think it might be. But let's go for this one actually. Also, Linus Tech Tips. Linus bloody Tech Tips has sent me a screwdriver kit which has my channel's name on it. That is a career moment, monumental career moment right there. The fact that he possibly knows who I am, or just his team does. So let's start taking screws out. It's been quite a long time since I've actually done a mod like this, like a full-on kind of transformation of something into something completely different, more or less, and I'm super excited about it. This one is gorgeous, and I've been working with Nick for years making videos on his products. Like, he sent me one of his very earliest metal Game Boy Color prototypes, and I've had the fortune of working with him for a really long time, and it's always such a pleasure. He's such a lovely guy. It's great to talk to him as well. He's a really, really nice guy, and he does genuinely care so much about making these products the best they can possibly be for everybody. One of the other things I was going to say as well is there is a USB-C mod that you can do to this DS as well, but again, it's optional. And then if you don't want to actually do that mod, included is little blanking plates. I'm not sure where I've put it right now, but there's little blanking plates so that you can cover up the hole. It is insane how much this guy has thought about this. And well, it's not insane. It's incredibly cool, and just the accessibility for everyone is awesome. A very nice thing to see. That's what you're not gonna find, innovation like this, on some of the Chinese knockoff products that are offered out there. The similar things to what Nick makes, but Chinese versions from AliExpress and whatnot. They are not going to be innovating. They're more or less just going to be copying, and they're not going to have the same level of care that Nick does, because this is like a passion-fueled project. So taking apart DS is fairly straightforward, and this, by the way, is an absolutely lovely project to do if you've not done any sort of mods before. It's just a very straightforward one, and as I've said a million times, lots of different sort of difficulty levels for different people. So we're going to take the two screws out here. We need to take off the antenna, which is a brick connector and then a bit of adhesive. So we can just pull that up. There we go. And then unplug that. And then if you sort of flip it upside down so that the hole is facing up, you can then very easily thread that under the cartridge connector like that. Now we can undo this, which is probably for the, I'd have to remember where they go. Oh yeah, one is for the microphone. Okay, so let's now pop this bottom screen out, and we can flip it over and just undo the top screen like that, which is on a little sort of ribbon cable connector. You just flick it up. Okay, we can set that over to the side. I actually don't think we need anything else from there other than the DS speaker, which can be a little bit of a faff to get out of that shell, so you might want to just order one of these on eBay. They're only going to be a few pounds, dollars, whatever. Let's remove this bottom screen. We have to be extremely careful while doing this, because the digitizer ribbon cable connector is very, very delicate, and I absolutely despise having to do this. It is just so delicate. I'm going to zoom the camera in. There it is. I'm going to use a blade, which I know is a little bit dodgy because there's a ribbon here and we need to be careful. But it is probably just the safest way to actually do this. You have to be super careful. I'm going to try and keep my head out of frame, but I am going to take my time here. Okay. I've popped it back down so that it can not be caught on anything and broken off. Now we can unplug this fully and remove the bottom screen. Now I've actually had to buy another bottom screen on eBay because, oh God, is that a screen protector? So I bought a replacement bottom screen on eBay because that one was burnt, and it's in absolutely abysmal condition. And I don't think that there's a screen protector on there. That is actually just how it is. Let me just remove the bezel. You need to do that. By the way, you need to remove the bezel. And when you do that, be incredibly careful not to lift up the actual digitizer, the touchscreen segment of it. So I'm going to get a knife here and just make sure it's going through the right layer. But yeah, be super careful while doing this. But I think it's all going to be for nothing because I actually think that this touchscreen is in terrible, terrible condition. Yeah. So that is not a screen protector. That is actually the condition of the digitizer. Wow. Brilliant. Well, you can always trust on eBay. So what I've got here is another digitizer. This is a aftermarket replacement one. So we're gonna have to stick that on it because we do still want the touchscreen functionality, because you can plug in various different multimedia cards up here, R4 cards or whatever, because it is still a DS at the end of the day, and you can have even emulators on there and stuff now. So we do still want the touchscreen to be able to control that. But I think we will, let's do this now actually. Let's do this now. That came off concerningly easily. I don't know what has happened to this screen, but I'd be very surprised if that even works. So I bought a working touchscreen that probably isn't going to work. Okay, so let's now peel off that. Just going to take a little air duster. Make sure that that's all free from dust. And then we can attach the new digitizer. That seems to be pretty good. And we've got a nice protector on there as well. Nice. Okay, what we can actually do is test that that screen works, because I'm a little bit nervous now that we've just done a touchscreen replacement and we didn't even check that the LCD screen was any good. So let's, I'm gonna quickly plug everything back in and test it. Good. That works. It's not plugged in. The touchscreen isn't plugged in, but we have to assume that that is gonna work fine. Let's turn this off now. So now we can unplug that again and remove the bottom screen. And what we're gonna do first off is install this mod here, this amp mod with the resistor for tricking the top screen into thinking that it's still there. So what we have to do is basically just fill these holes with solder and then connect the positive and negative power to it. And then there's one over here as well, which looks like it's in the back of one of the cartridge connectors. Not exactly sure what that's for, but we're going to solder that all into place. And then there's also two pads up here as well for the speakers. So let's do some soldering. Okay, so I'm going to probably be quite silent during this because I need to have my extractor fan on so that I'm not breathing in solder fumes. What I'm going to do is clean up the board with some isopropyl alcohol, locate which of the pads I'm going to be soldering to. I'm going to very gently scrape back some of the silk screen that might be covering up those pads so that I can just solder straight to them. I'll tin them up first and then bridge all of the contacts so that they're all making a nice connection. And then we'll give it all a good clean up with some isopropyl alcohol. And I'll also attach the speaker wires as well. I'm hoping that those wires are going to be long enough. I've actually got in here some extra wires that Nick's included, so I might just use those instead. I'll probably be quite quiet during this. As I said, this is going to be on, so enjoy. So I am really happy with how that's all turned out. Complete transparency, I actually started filming this video about a week ago, and this is the second time I'm attempting this because I didn't have my soldering iron at the right temperature, which by the way is 384 degrees centigrade. That might actually be different for whatever soldering iron you've got. I don't think I've got the best quality soldering iron, and basically when I went to solder these two pads, the ground pad just obviously acted as like a heat sink and sucked all of the heat out of my soldering iron, and I ended up destroying this flexible ribbon cable. So I now think that I have successfully installed this. I think it looks great. I think it looks like I've done a good job, and I'm really happy about that. Let's test it. Okay, here we go. Power light. Boom! Speaker and screen. Oh my goodness me, I have done it. That is sick. Hell yeah. Okay, cool. Right, so let's move on to the building segment, which is gonna be fun. This is where things are gonna start coming together, which is just awesome. And again, this is where we're also gonna see the unbelievable attention to detail from Nick. He's even included this very small, perfectly cut piece of plastic, which goes into the top half. We're gonna have to adhere it down, and that is gonna stop the cartridge from scratching if you're using like metal cartridges, which Nick actually makes. And there's even just the tiniest, you're not even gonna be able to notice it, but it's actually recessed ever so slightly so that when you put that in, it's flush. Like, it's just nuts, the detail on this thing, absolutely nuts. So this felt is going to prevent the volume slider from having a kind of a metal on metal feel and sound, which was some feedback that he'd had from customers. Let me just demonstrate. So this is the extension piece, because this PCB, as you can see, is much shorter than the overall height of the DMG macro, and that is so that that cartridge can then sit flush inside the device, which is really cool. But in order to actually reach the little volume slider, which is all the way over there, this custom volume sliders had to be made. So the way that that then actually works is really clever. There's this big recess which acts as like a track for this protruded part here, so that it can, you know, slide like that. But you're getting a metal on metal slide, whereas if I just put this little piece of felt in here and then place the volume slider down, you're gonna get this really smooth and soft slide, which is just Amazing, and it's going to pad any sort of metal on metal kind of jangle, which some people don't favour. But if you do like that metal on metal sound, then you don't need to install this. Again, it's a very customizable mod, which is cool. So we're going to peel off the adhesive backing there, and we can just set that down into this little recess, and then prod it down with something. And then what better way to make sure it's properly in than to slide the volume slider around it. So there we go. There's one thing. Now, the other thing that Nick has included is a long piece of felt for the stylus. Now, there was actually a stylus. Here we go. There was a stylus included in the kit. Now, I've just obviously been sent everything as a YouTuber. It's going to differ. You're going to have to buy each thing individually on the website. Check, because some things might come with things, but other things might not, so just be really careful. Now, there is actually, and I think this is probably going to be an accident. Yeah, there is actually a very small little ding in mine on the stylus slot. I'm gonna say that that is actually an accident, because when I'm sliding this stylus in and out, it's scratching the stylus, and I have no doubt in my mind Nick would not have intended that. So I'm gonna try and just bend that out. I have done that. It's quite a thin little bit of metal, so it might have been a transport thing. So we are going to need to take out the stylus sheath, as I like to call it, from the back housing of the DS, the original DS that you would have taken apart to get the motherboard out. And if you're buying a motherboard off of eBay, for example, and you haven't got the full shell, that's something you're going to need to buy. And very nicely, there's a very good condition official black DS stylus in there, which I will be nicking rather than using Nick's one, which is aftermarket nonsense. Okay, so let's now also put in this little felt. Now, if you are doing this at home and you're following along, keep these two little black bits, because we're going to actually use them for something later as well. So there we have it. That's all nice and stuck down. Now we can take the stylus sheath and slot that into place. We're going to need to grab the screws. So from what I can tell, it's these ones, the 2mm screws. So let's take out 3 of those. Oh, wait a minute. There isn't actually a third one. That last one, don't worry about it. Okay, so let's actually double check how the stylus goes in. Oh, that feels good. Perfect. Nice and tight, nice and smooth. That's what we like. The other thing I'm going to do is stick down this little black piece. Actually, I don't think we can stick it down. From memory, Nick told me to do that after we put the screen in, so that it can go properly over that. But what I will do is just stick the adhesive down so that it's there and ready. There we go. Next up, let's put these little plastic brackets into place. So I think I might need to get some flush cutters to cut out this. Now, I even remember Nick saying that if you don't cut out the plastic perfectly, that the design, it takes into account the little nubs so that that doesn't impact how the buttons press. I mean, can you just imagine that level of organization? I don't know if you can see that, but there's 2 little bumps either side, which take into account cutting out the pieces of plastic. So that then sits in there nice and tight, nice and flush. And then we can put the D-pad one over here. There we go. Now we can screw that into place using our 2mm screws. We can screw these into place now. Now, I don't know what kind of videos people want to watch these days. I'm a bit of an old timer in this space, but I just decided today I really wanted to focus on enjoying this build. I think sometimes making an actual YouTube video takes away from doing this, and I know it's kind of my job to be, you know, more informative and entertaining. And so maybe me doing it like this is going to be less entertaining for people. But I just wanted to build this. It's such a treat of a device. And I really wanted to just sit down and chill. And I've just had a chocolate muffin and a cup of tea. So my tummy's happy. And I'm very happy right now, just building this little thing. There we go. So all of those are in. Okay, nice. Now, let me take a second to think about what we have to do next. I think it could be the USB-C port. So what I'm going to do for that is take out the USB-C port from here. And there's a couple of wires that have been included, which is very kind. And I'm going to solder the USB-C port into place. Now, if you are going to do this, it is actually fairly straightforward. It is only 2 wires, but you are going to need to stick down the USB-C port with a little bit of adhesive tape. And on top of that, you need to be careful with the alignment of it because it actually sits flush against the edge of the shell, like inside the shell. You don't want it to be sticking out so that it could, you know, be actually proud of the shell. You want to just have it so that it sits inside the lip of the shell. If you're actually doing this, you will know exactly what I mean, but you shouldn't be able to push it out, is basically the thing. So let's stick some adhesive down. There we go. See, even the little things like the sticker, you gotta really be locked in and concentrate on getting that stuck in. Make sure it's aligned, as I mentioned. Sitting just ever so slightly behind the lip of the shell. So you shouldn't be able to push it forward and it stick out, which is perfect. Okay, time to solder. Right, so I've installed the USB-C port and the 2 wires, put a little bit of Kapton tape over that. We're obviously going to have to be careful because some very small little metal buttons are going to go in here for the start and select. We need to make sure those cables are out the way, the wires rather. We need to install this light diffuser piece here. So I'm just going to cut that out of the plastic. We can slot that into place up here and we can screw that down. Okay, so now that the little light diffuser is in there, we're going to put in some of the buttons now. Let's start off with the start and select. These absolutely beautiful little anodized, in fact these are just raw, but you can also get this in a different color. I think they also do it in black right now. They might do it in different colors in the future, I don't know, but yeah. And also, a little while ago, Nick gave me this really lovely thing that held this slightly above the table, meaning all of the buttons wouldn't stick up as I'm installing everything. I don't know what I did with that. I've moved house since then, so that is probably long gone. It's going to make this more difficult, I imagine. I wonder if I can sit something under it, like a couple of batteries. Let's do that. Oh, innovation, innovation. Okay, now we can stick in the buttons. Do these have a particular way? They kind of do. They have a small little tab that sticks out, but because they have nothing on them, like they don't have A, Y, X, B, and the famous G, you can put each one in any place that your heart desires. Finally, some freedom of choice. Now we can put the rubber membrane over the top. Not sure if I was sent these just because I'm a YouTuber-y dude, or if you get these with the kit, but I think they look exactly the same as the original Nintendo ones. Yes, they do. So you could just use those if you want. There we go. Lovely. Now we're going to move this over here and set down this beautiful D-pad. Just take a look at that. Absolutely stunning. Pop that in there, like so. And then the membrane over the top. Lovely. Is it time? Is it time? It could be time. Yeah, that's going to sort of route round there and out of the way. Cool. Or is it going to go like that? Oh, sugar. Yeah, it's going to go like that. Ah! Arrgh! Grr! Nick sent me black buttons. Oh, damn. He sent me black buttons. Oh, well, that's not even a question. He sent me black buttons and a red buttons. This is all coming apart again. And then the black D-pad. Lovely. You can see there the black bit of felt that I've used on the USB-C port. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Damn. Okay, so now we can start closing this thing up for good. So we need to use the included L&R shoulder buttons that Nick's made. You can use the original ones from what I've heard, but I think you have to just ever so slightly modify them. I'll obviously leave links to Nick's website in the description so that you can have a look at on there for guides and whatnot. But as far as I know, these just sit right on top. We need to ensure these wires are out of the way. Do we need to put the spring in there? I'm gonna guess that we do. Nick's actually included a bag of bits here which has a couple of springs in, so I'm gonna grab those. Oh, wait, but you don't need to use the little axle kind of piece because that's already in the mold of the metal. There we go. One spring in. Both of those springs are now in. Oh, I think we're getting close. Let's see what's next. Let's put the Wi-Fi module back down. And there's a little cutout here for 3 buttons, and then there's a piece which has been included which blank covers up that. And that is for, from what I know, controlling having the top screen display on the bottom screen. You've got to do some firmware stuff to get that, and also install an actual mod that comes out of the top screen connector. I'm not going to be doing that in today's video, but it's cool to think about those things, to add those things in the future. There's also a blank plate to cover up the stylus port if you don't want that. And then there's this piece. Yeah, there's a little piece here which just sits on over the top of the speaker so that you can hold the speaker nice and flat and into place, and it's not going to shake around. What else is there to do? I don't know that there's much. Oh yeah, we've got to solder the the USB-C port. That is a lot. I think we are ready to just completely close this up. And boy, am I excited to do that. Don't forget this little black piece for the cartridges. That was quite tough. It's very tricky to get those wires in there. And another thing that I've just realized is that I'm totally using the wrong wires. I do not think that these are an appropriate gauge of wire for power. I think Nick might have just included these for like speaker wires, but luckily you still got your existing charging port up here as well. So I can maybe just plug a USB-C cable in, see if it works, hopefully it doesn't set on fire, and then open it back up and swap those wires out at a later stage. But yeah, I think I need to be careful about using that long term because it could do something bad. Right, we need to do the volume slider. That I think can probably just go on now, and then it will close up and clamp in when we put the back shell on. So there's the volume slider. Again, oh no, that's the power slider. And that's a beautiful piece that, again, Nick has made and designed perfectly, and it even has that little triangle on there. So that's the power slider. Let's just pop that into there like that, and it sits inside a rail. Again, beautiful engineering. Now we need to do the volume slider, which is this one down here. We can just set that down, and then we can place this down. I can't believe it. Did that just happen? Something's definitely going wrong with that L and R button. That is not right. I'm going to use the black ones and just see if there's a very slight problem with that specific one. Okay, right, now I think that's all in. I tell you what, this is fiddly. This is extremely fiddly. Like, mega fiddly. I started off really chilled, and now I'm sweating. Shoulder buttons are pressing. Stylus is stylusing. Volume slider is sliding. Power button is buttoning. These buttons are moving. I think that could be it. It looks like there's one of the 2mm screws that just goes in up here in the battery cover. So let's quickly pop one of those in there. Okay, let's move all of this stuff to the side. Right, now we need to find out which battery it was that worked. It is that one. Oh yeah. It's me from the future. I've done a couple of things off camera. I spent so long building this thing, and then there was a couple of little sort of snags that were just holding it back. And so I decided to stop the cameras and take a little break. By that I mean I took about a week off. This is a week later, and I have fixed all of the things that were wrong with this. I would say if you are a beginner, this is a slightly difficult process. Not because it's like actually a really hard thing to do. Oh, just noticed the power slider is stuck. Great, I'll have to sort that out in a second as well. This is what I mean. to put all of these things together, there's lots of things that can get in the way, and you need to have a sort of a general knowledge of how to put something together, holding things together, and in the places that they need to go is so specific, and they have to be in a certain way, and you have to align something, and all of those nuances are what make this slightly difficult, not the actual step-by-step process. And also there's a general level of kind of problem solving that you're going to need for your own macro build that I can't tell you about necessarily in this video. One thing I will say, I had to do a few things off camera. The Helder's amp kit, that you're soldering to the board behind the screen, and there's not a lot of space behind the screen and the PCB, like in between that space. And the solder on that amp kit was what was pressing up on the screen, giving it that dark patch. So my solution to that was to really flatten down the solder as best I can, and then I put some Kapton tape. You can actually see on the back of the screen where it was pressing into the screen, and the actual screen is metal. Obviously you've got this foam pad here, but if that sort of penetrates through and touches the metal, you'll get some shorting. And the two specific solder points in question are the power ones. So my macro was just sort of randomly turning on and off, and that turned out to be the reason why. So then after that, I put a bit of Kapton tape over it as well, just to hope that to prevent that from happening ever again. And now it's fine. The other thing I did, I was not happy with this aftermarket digitizer. It just looked so hazy. I checked it again. There was no other film on there. Whatever they're using in the aftermarket technology, it's terrible, and you get this hazy effect. So I took off the touchscreen from the burnt screen that we removed in the first place from the DS that we used to build the macro, and I put some new adhesive around the edges of it and then stuck that down instead. Thankfully, it had a screen protector on it, so that is now absolutely perfect and working beautifully. The other thing I did was I shortened the USB-C cables so that they ran under the cartridge slot. That gave me a little bit of extra room. I also cut down the stylus sheath because the end doesn't get screwed down and you've got that felt underneath the stylus. The end was sort of springing up, and that was just making it harder to close. I was having to sort of press everything down. Cutting that off solved that problem. This screw, where the speaker goes, is not needed. That turns out to be this screw here for the actual shell. And I think that was everything I did. And now it works, but I'm gonna have to quickly just solve this power switch problem. So give me a second. Okay, so that is now that problem solved. There was a little something just inside the power switch, and that was getting it stuck and stopping it from working. But we can now turn it on. This is the prototype BIOS, which I think is really damn cool. And also very fitting, because this is now not a DS anymore. So I've put this new kind of prototype software inside of it, which basically just really simplifies the UI. You could change that out again. It's only on the Wi-Fi module. But there we have it. Nintendo DS one-screen macro. Incredibly cool thing. I am so impressed with Nick's engineering on this. I mean, he's done lots of cool things in the past, like there's the pocket color, and then there's also the GBA SP. Yeah, this one's probably one of my favorites. But you've got to think about how simple this is. I mean, not actually that simple, but compared to something like this, there's a lot more parts inside here, a lot more technical parts inside here than in this one. I mean, this one's still incredibly hard as well to get that hinge and everything folding well. But yeah, Nick's products are just absolutely awesome, and this one is another fantastic one. So massive congratulations, Nick. Well done. This is beautiful. The thickness of it as well is just lovely. I've actually got the macro that I made. This is what people were doing before Nick started making these like face plates and actual now full shells, because obviously one of the first things he did for the macro was made just a faceplate that went onto the back here to prevent you from having to do what I did, which is using like body filler and spray paint and stuff like that. But I'm still very pleased with my little one screen macro. It is still very cool, but yeah, it's nowhere near as epic as this. But this is probably, I mean, 5 times the price. This is not cheap, but when you actually get this and you hold it in your hand, it feels like an incredibly premium device. Also, this is that problem that Nick has solved, the age-old macro issue of the sticking out Game Boy cartridge, forever making it look like a Nintendo DS Lite. He's now completely made that go flush, which obviously has made the macro slightly taller, but we're older now and our hands are bigger, and so that's actually just far more comfortable for me. The volume slider is lovely. Really nice and smooth. To be honest with you, it is all now absolutely perfect. Everything works as it should. Nice, springy, clicky L&R buttons. I think the black actually works really well. Obviously, one thing that you can do is use like an R4 card, and then that will allow you to play actual emulators on here as well. Because I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you could buy an analog pocket for this price, but yeah, being able to run emulators on this is going to be quite a cool thing. Obviously, that's not got anything to do with Nick, but it is something you can do. And one thing that I just discovered is that inside this one, not only does the right trigger button affect the brightness, I've got no idea why it does that, but also you can launch the Game Boy games, and then you have this different border. I can't think why that would be a thing. Is there any options to do I don't know. I had no idea that that was a thing. So there we have it. I hope you've all enjoyed this video. It's nearly bloody an hour long or something like that. It's also nearly Christmas, so merry festive seasons to you all, whatever you celebrate. And yeah, I'll catch you very soon. Goodbye.